It's 2036, and you have a score that you can't see, but it follows you everywhere. It's not your credit score, it's your citizen risk score, calculated in real time by the AI managing your city's security. This AI sees everything. It sees the extra bottle of wine you bought last night, the political podcast you listened to on your commute, the frustrated email you sent to your landlord, and the elevated heart rate your smartwatch detected during a heated argument. To you, it's just life. To the system, it's a constant stream of data to be analyzed for patterns of future dissent or instability. You don't know your score, but everyone else in a position of power does. Today, you applied for a new job, one you were perfectly qualified for. You'll never know that a human hiring manager never even saw your resume. The system flagged your risk score as amber due to your recent online association with a friend who attended a protest, and you were automatically filtered out. You haven't broken a law. You haven't done anything wrong. You've simply lived your life. But in 2036, that life is a data trail, and that trail is now used to judge not who you are, but who a machine predicts you might one day become. This system isn't a far-fetched fantasy. It is the inevitable evolution of the surveillance and data analysis tools being perfected by real companies at this very moment. So how did we get to a future of pre-crime scores? The journey begins with a concept that sounds perfectly logical, even noble, using data to stop crime before it happens. On paper, the logic is seductive. As detailed in comprehensive reports by research organizations like the RAND Corporation, predictive policing operates on a simple premise: that the past can predict the future. The technology generally falls into two categories. The first is place-based forecasting, where an algorithm analyzes historical crime data, time, location, type of offense, to generate maps of hotspots where crime is likely to occur next. Police departments, like the NYPD, can then allocate more resources and patrols to these specific blocks. The second, more controversial type is person-based forecasting, which analyzes an individual's network, criminal history, and social data to assign a risk score, identifying them as a potential future offender or victim. Tech giants like Palantir Technologies built their empires on this very promise: to find the signal in the noise, to make the unseen visible, and to give law enforcement a powerful edge. The goal presented to the public was efficiency, objectivity, and a safer society for all. A world where data, not intuition, would guide justice. But this entire premise rests on one fundamentally flawed assumption: that the data itself is pure. It is not. The system doesn't learn from crime. It learns from reported crime and arrests. And that data is a reflection not of reality, but of decades of human bias. This is where the clean, scientific model collapses. Investigative journalists at the Markup have demonstrated this effect with damning clarity. In city after city, they found that the data fed into these predictive algorithms was already skewed. It came from neighborhoods that were historically over-policed, primarily communities of color and low-income areas. When an AI is trained on this biased data, it doesn't become an objective tool. It becomes a high-tech amplifier for old prejudices. The algorithm looks at the data and concludes with cold mathematical certainty that these communities are the problem. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. The biased software directs more police into these targeted neighborhoods. A heavier police presence naturally leads to more arrests for minor infractions, loitering, jaywalking, things that would go unnoticed elsewhere. This new arrest data is then fed back into the system, which sees its predictions confirmed, making the neighborhood an even bigger hotspot. The AI's prophecy becomes self-fulfilling. The community is trapped in a digital prison, sentenced by an algorithm for the crimes of the past. And this brings us to the core philosophical crisis, a point the ACLU has been making for years. This isn't just a case of garbage in, garbage out. It's a fundamental redefinition of justice. Pre-crime technology, as the ACLU argues, doesn't prevent violence. It automates discrimination and strips away the presumption of innocence. It creates a world where you can be punished not for your actions, but for your data profile, for the person the machine calculates you are statistically likely to be. The promise of an objective, crime-free world sold to us by corporations like Axon and Clearview AI is a Trojan horse. Hidden inside is a system that doesn't just predict an unequal future. It actively and efficiently engineers it. So how does a free society walk into a cage and mistake it for a penthouse? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens the same way you boil a frog, by turning up the heat so slowly, it doesn't realize it's cooked until it's too late. The 2030s weren't a decade of oppression. They were the decade of optimization. It all started with a promise that's almost impossible to refuse. The same promise that built Silicon Valley, a frictionless life. First, it was just about convenience. Your car insurance would drop by a few bucks a month if you shared your driving data. Your mortgage application got approved faster if you linked your social media. No one forced you, but the incentives were just too good to ignore. We traded little pieces of ourselves for a slightly easier life, not realizing we were building the very system that would eventually manage us. By 2036, that system is fully mature. It's not a government program you can vote against. It's the very fabric of the economy, the engine of society. And it has fundamentally broken the core promises of the American dream. Think about the idea of a fresh start, of proving yourself through hard work. In 2036, that's a romantic myth. Imagine a young woman who grew up in a poor, over-policed neighborhood, what we now call a red zone. She works hard, gets a degree, and applies for a corporate job. Her resume is perfect. But the hiring process is no longer human. An AI, developed by a Palantir-style data firm, does the first pass. It scans not her resume, but her entire life's data. It sees the low scores of her childhood friends, the police drones that patrolled her high school, the predictive hotspot maps of her old block. The algorithm doesn't see a determined individual, it sees a statistical risk. She never even gets an interview. The system has decided her future based on a past she didn't choose. Now, think about community and freedom of association. You know how people talk about good schools or safe neighborhoods? In 2036, those are no longer just social constructs. They're algorithmically enforced realities. When you look for an apartment, you're not just looking at rent and square footage. You're looking at the zone's stability rating. Moving into a green zone means better city services, lower insurance rates, and a boost to your own score. But the application process is brutal, an invasive digital background check that weeds out anyone with an amber score or below. Society has been resegregated, not by race or creed, but by data, and the system keeps you in your place. Your own navigation app, now integrated with the city's risk management platform, will gently reroute you around areas where your profile suggests you don't belong. It's all done in the name of safety, but the result is a society of invisible walls. But perhaps the most chilling change is what this has done to us, to our relationships. Imagine going on a first date. There's a moment, maybe after the first drink, of quiet calculation. You both discreetly check each other's public-facing citizen score. It's the new normal. Why invest time in someone who turns out to be a high-risk amber? Why endanger your own meticulously managed green score by associating with the wrong person? The system has outsourced our intuition, our judgment, our trust. It's created a world where we look at each other not as people, but as collections of data points, potential assets or liabilities to our own standing. And the engine room for this entire reality? It's not some dark secret government agency. It's the brand names that defined our era. It's the raw processing power of NVIDIA's quantum-level AI chips. It's the endless, scalable storage of the Amazon Web Services cloud. It's the analytical genius of software that can see patterns in human behavior that we can't see ourselves. These companies didn't set out to build a prison. They set out to solve problems, risk, crime, inefficiency. They succeeded. They created a perfectly managed, perfectly predictable world. But in the obsessive quest to eliminate every risk, they built a society that has eliminated the very things that make us human. The capacity for surprise, the grace of a second chance, and the chaotic, beautiful, unpredictable freedom to choose our own path. So, this is the paradox of the perfectly safe society. It is clean, it is orderly, it is efficient, and it is profoundly unfree. The utopia of a world without crime, a world that we are actively striving for, comes at a cost that we have not yet been willing to calculate. The future we've walked through today wasn't built by tyrants in military uniforms. It was built by well-intentioned engineers in Silicon Valley, by city councils wanting to protect their citizens, and by us, by every one of us who has clicked I agree without reading, who has traded a little more privacy for a little more convenience. We have been sold a vision of a frictionless world, but we were never told that the friction is what makes us human. It's the mistakes we make, the unexpected paths we take, the capacity to change our minds and become someone new. An algorithm that knows you better than you know yourself doesn't leave room for that. It doesn't leave room for redemption. This system isn't some distant storm on the horizon. It is being assembled, piece by piece, in the real world right now. It's in the facial recognition software used by local police. It's in the behavioral algorithms that decide which news you see. It's in the smart devices in our homes, listening not for commands, but for data. We are forging the chains of our own managed future, and we're calling it progress. This channel does not offer solutions. We only present the most probable trajectories based on the data at hand. The purpose is not to spread fear, but to provoke a necessary and urgent conversation. Because before we delegate our judgment and our freedom machine, we must first understand the bargain we are making. And so it comes down to a choice, not for a fictional character in 2036, but for you right now. Here is the question. If your city's leadership held a public vote tomorrow on a proposal to implement a new AI security system, a system that is scientifically proven to reduce violent crime by 50% within 5 years, saving hundreds of lives, but the price is that it requires constant, passive analysis of all your public movements, your online communications, and your consumer behavior, would you vote yes or no? There's no easy answer. It's a choice between a quantifiable good and an abstract ideal. Think about it. What is the true price of safety? Let us know your vote in the comments. This is a prophecy from AI. Be prepared.